picks of the week. Wall's out here to make you some money. Are you ready to make some money?
All right, and welcome back to another edition of Big Wall's Big Picks of the Week. We got a six-pack of picks coming at you this week, again with 12-ounce sports college football writer Nate Wahl. I got him on the phone with me, and we're going to do another segment here. Life got in the way last week a little bit for both of us, but no matter. This week, we're looking to make you some money, and Nate's going to join me here on the phone. Nate, what's up, brother?
We're doing good. It's just another slate of big games this week. I kind of been moving from basketball to football, so I hope that doesn't deteriorate my picks this week. But yeah, looking forward to another big slate of games, and just kind of looking to see how the season plays out. We're kind of getting down to the end of the season where they're going to be starting to make their picks for various bowl games and whatnot, and who's going to the playoff and whatnot. But looking forward to it for sure.
Yeah, most definitely. There's still some conferences to be decided. There's still some teams left with things to play for. We have looking at your picks across the board, your six-pack, you're all over the place. You got a little SEC action, Pac-12, little Mountain West. You got a little bit going on a little bit everywhere there.
Yeah, I got some action in the MAC. We got some overs. We got some spreads. We got some money lines. Just try to open up the playbook a little bit this week, and get people stuff that they're like, huh? Like, why that game?
Well,
that's what I try to throw people off their gourd.
Yeah, I always say, hey, do a little research in the MAC, and you'll find it's fun football from time to time. So. Without further ado, let's jump in. Your first game on your six-pack here is Fresno at Boise State. One game that will decide potentially the Mountain West champion, or at least representative. It's Fresno and Boise State on the blue turf right now. Boise State is a slight dog. Fresno State's been playing pretty well this year. They're ranked 23rd. 8-1 at home, 8-1 total, 4-1 on the road against 7-2 Boise State. What do you see here? The live line is 52.5.
Yeah, I see. Just based on past games. Brett Ripken's been the quarterback there for the last 4 years, and he's absolutely owned Fresno State every year. He's 4-0, and in the last 5, they're 5-0. So I can't say that, history has a little bit to do with it. I do think that, Fresno, your favorite college football guy, Kurt Herbstreit's been all over Fresno this year. And I think this is when Kurt gets a nice kick in the ass. I like Boise State winning this game. Brett Ripken's been on fire. He's already hit his passing total or career high in passing total in 9 games than he has in his entire career. So, he's playing great football. Their defense has been playing well. And I just think Fresno State, besides losing to Minnesota this year, this is when we'll get a kick in the pants a little bit. I think just to see Boise, it's in Boise. Fresno does not do very well when they play at Boise. I think a lot of teams struggle when they see this blue turf and they're like, okay, what the hell is this? But I'm riding with the Broncos on this one. Their passing game's outstanding, and I think Fresno will have a problem with it. So they'll get exposed this week, and Kirk will look like an idiot. So
right on. That's my boy. I like to call him Derp Herbstreit because he sometimes doesn't always know what he's talking about. He's the mouthpiece for the machine, as I like to call him.
That's a good way to put it, for sure.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. I've seen over the years, I've actually been to a game before, and the blue jerseys on the blue field, it almost sometimes just seems unfair. So, yeah, like Boise State in that spot, especially, Fresno's had a tough time in previous years, and like you said, Brett Rippon is, he's got good pedigree with his dad as well, so. All right, let's move forward. We've got Akron at Eastern Michigan. The spread currently is 13 right now. What do you see in this spot? Eastern Michigan, pretty much, both teams are pretty much a 500 team, but Eastern Michigan 6-4 against the spread. We all know about their win against Purdue. But things have kind of leveled off for Eastern Michigan a little bit as the season has progressed. Akron, tough team, had a tough year. Not really too much to say about them, but here's a classic case of a team that's getting a lot of points that you never really quite know what could happen.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing with the Zips that stands out to me is, with their defense, their yards per play. They stand very, very crazy to say Akron stands in the top 30 for anything in FBS, but they actually stand in the top 30 as far as on defense of yards per play, which I think means quite a bit. I mean, if you can. That means you're stopping guys on third down, on third and ones. You're stopping guys on, you're not allowing the big play. That's really what that says, because I think the number on that was, right around 4.5. So to say that you're not allowing kind of that big play that can, make or break the game, I think you could see Akron in this game. And I mean, when you look at this game as a whole, I mean, going with the history of it. If you look at different, offensive and defensive categories, rushing yards, rush defense, pass defense, Akron has had the advantage in almost every category as far as, offense and defense over the last 3 games or so. So, I mean, it's not, I don't want to pick them to win, but I mean, when you can play great defense, you can keep the over under, you can keep it probably on the under, but you can also, 13's almost 2 touchdowns. I think that's going to be a tough. They may not win this game, but they'll lose by 3, or they'll maybe lose by a touchdown. I don't see anything more than that.
Yeah, right on. So got Akron plus the 13 in that spot. Moving forward, a rare 11 a.m. college football game on the Pac-12. You don't see that too often here. You got it's 2 p.m. Eastern on your side, but over here in the Pacific, we're just waking up at that point. You have UCLA and you have Arizona State, which 2 teams that they probably had higher expectations than necessary, given the fact that they had famous head coaches, maybe not necessarily good head coaches. The book's still out on Chip Kelly. Obviously, anybody who took him too seriously in year 1 is definitely disappointed right now. But I think Chip Kelly is building small foundations. He's going to have to travel into Tempe to face Arizona State, and Herm Edwards, who started off hot this year, have kind of fallen back to the middle of the pack there at 5-4, 3-3 in the conference. You got UCLA 2-7, 2-4 in the conference. Ugly football, I think, is headed our way for this matchup. Teams are not scoring a lot, but definitely giving up some points. But Arizona State seems to be a pretty decent team at home. They are 4-1. And 4-1 against the spread. How do you see this one shaping up here?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of created a term for, their 4-1 record against the spread. I call it home spread advantage. UCLA is, you got the direct opposite for these teams against the spread. You got UCLA, who's about 66% against the spread this year. And then you have UCLA, who is 33% against the spread. So, I mean, it's one of those things just to look at UCLA's defense. They've had opportunities to play in good games. They got beat badly by Cincinnati. Just defensively, their defense on pass defense and rush defense has just been extremely subpar. And I just think that they need to kind of kick it into gear. And that's why I like Arizona on the minus 12. I think that, once they kind of pick it up as far as the offense, and I mean, I know on the West Coast, they're like, oh shoot, I gotta get out of bed at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, and it will be a breath of fresh air for me on the East Coast, because I'll be able to make it till at least more than halftime, obviously, because the game will be probably 6:30 when it's done over here. So, but I'm rolling with the Sun Devils. I think UCLA is going to have a tough time, and I think really once Chip Kelly kind of develops his own recruiting class. I mean, I think last year he was blessed to have Josh Rosen as his guy for his first year at UCLA. So once he kind of develops his recruiting class, I think he'll figure it out. But at this time, I mean, he could be in high water.
Yeah, that's probably a good analysis of it, because you never quite know what Chip Kelly can do without his own players. It's hard to really grade guys with previous recruiting classes. You're right. So, and Josh Rosen, who decided to move on, never really got the chance to connect with Chip Kelly. But nevertheless, you got UCLA, you got Arizona State. Nate is laying the 12 with ASU. All right, let's move forward. You got the University of New Mexico at Air Force. Not going to lie to you, 3-6 versus 3-6 doesn't really sound fun to me. This feels like a game, if I were to bet it, I would definitely have no interest in watching. But you seem to find some of these games that I have no interest in watching. I turn them on to sweat your bets or to tail your bets, and I end up having some good football, some decent football in front of me. Air Force is currently a 13.5-point favorite. They do look pretty good at home. They're 5-3 on the 5-3 against the spread, 2-1 against the spread at home. You got Air Force minus 13.5. The total is 56.
Where I'm standing with this one is, as crazy as it seems, the New Mexico Lobos are perfect at something. Last 5 games against Air Force, they've covered the spread every single time. They're 5-0 against the spread last 5 games at Air Force, away or home. So that's impressive. I also think, in away games this year, they're at 60%. So, your average bettor, I think, likes to consider herself a professional over 58%. So New Mexico could make us professional gamblers if that's the way it's being put. I think 13.5. I don't think Air Force is not a team that they beat you up quickly, and I think if New Mexico can stay in this game, I know New Mexico has had a hell of a time with injuries to quarterbacks this year, so that could be a factor in the game. But just to kind of see, 13.5, I looked at that number and I'm like, Air Force is not a team that's going to run up the score on you. They play pretty conservative football, so I like the Lobos on this one. So Bob Davie knows how to coach against Air Force against the spread. He's big for the spread bettors.
Yeah, 5-0 last 5 is what I like to call a trend. So you can make up things. I make up things too. Well, even though trend's not really made up, but I like your HSA. What was that? Home spread advantage.
Home spread advantage. Yep, you got it.
There you go. So we've got New Mexico in the 13.5. That's pretty decent. Hopefully, maybe at some point you can find it before the game starts. Maybe it'll kick up to 14 at that spot. A lot of people just really not paying a lot of attention. Probably bet it right up to 2 touchdowns in there. All right, we got some SEC football in the middle of the afternoon. We have number 11 Kentucky traveling to Tennessee. The matchup, used to be in recent years, didn't sound as sexy, but we've got a Kentucky team that's fighting for a good bowl spot here. You have UK and Benny Snell. They're 7-2 after getting beat by Georgia. Going up against Tennessee, who's 4-5 after getting beat by everybody, except for Auburn. But the key player in this matchup, obviously, would be Benny Snell. He is the first player in Kentucky history with 3 straight 1,000-yard seasons and 10 touchdowns. Joins 2 players that is pretty good company. Maybe you've heard of them, Darren McFadden and Herschel Walker.
Yeah, those guys are okay, I would say.
No slouches in their rights. The line currently is University of Kentucky minus 5.5. The total is 42.5 right now. Where do you see this one shaping up come game time?
See, when I looked at this over-under, I'm leaning on the over, and my reasoning is I don't think that this is going to be a lopsided game. I think it's going to be a pretty defensive matchup. I think Benny Snell may struggle. Weird fact about Kentucky football, it would be really crazy for me to see a scenario where they can go into Florida and win for the first time in 30 years. And they can go into Knoxville and win for the first time in 32 years. Wow. those are two things. Like if they can overcome that in 1 year, I mean, power to them. But I mean, I got to be safe with this one. I think the over at 42.5. I see this as like a 24-21 game, or something along those lines. I think with the over's been really consistent in the last 5 games. It's been at about 80% as far as when these two play. So I mean that's kind of something to look at. But I mean it could be a defensive shootout, and whoever misses a field goal at the end of the game is your loser. So I mean I like the over. I mean 42. I always say when the numbers get in the low 40s, it's like, okay, what is Vegas trying to tell us? Like why is it so low? But I think everyone's anticipating a low-scoring game, but I think it could get over 3 touchdowns each pretty easily. So I'm taking the over on this one.
Yeah, especially in college football when those totals get in the 40s. You're always like, what's going on? I mean, usually it's, great defenses, which Kentucky's played pretty good defense this year, but they don't have a slouch. They're not slouches on offense. So, it'd be interesting to see what we got there with Kentucky and Tennessee. All right, and finally, your sixth game in a six-pack here. We're talking with Nate Wahl, college football writer for 12-Ounce Sports. We got his six-pack of picks. The last pick here is Cal versus USC. The line currently 5.5 in favor of the Trojans. Total 47.5. You got 5-4 versus 5-4. I don't think this is where USC expected to be this year, but nevertheless, the AD has given Clay Helton the vote of confidence, whatever that means sometimes. Two teams not really great against the spread. Cal 4-4, and USC 3-6. But Cal is 3-1 on the road against the spread, and that's where they are going to be in Southern California. Here, you got USC, you got Cal, you got 5.5. Where do you see this one?
USC, when they see the spread on this game, when their coaching staff looks at the spread on this game, and their players look at the spread on this game, they hate the spread. They're in their last 12 games, they're covering only 25% of the time. That's not a team I would ever have a vote of confidence in. And like you said, Clay Helton's not a coach I would have any confidence in as well. So I can understand why they're just not playing, old USC football, It's just tough to see a scenario where, I mean, defensively, Cal is absolutely outstanding on the defensive side of the ball. And, I think USC, they've seen good defenses, but I think Cal's defense is so much better than, they get credit for. I mean, they had a tough game against Oregon, but I mean, overall they played extremely well, on defense. And I think, Justin Wilcox, I think he's only going to get better and better. And this is his second year, so he's getting recruits, but he's still going to get more recruits. He's on his full slate of guys, freshmen through seniors. So I think once, with this game as a whole, I could definitely see Cal staying within the plus 5.5. And, I think Cal's got a great opportunity to win this game. I think this is a 3-point game either way, whichever the coin flips. I think it could definitely go with the Golden Bears. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, Cal has struggled in this series. USC has won 13 in a row in this series against the Bears. The last loss was in 2003 when the Bears had a quarterback by the name of Aaron Rodgers. Maybe you've heard of him. He's not too shabby.
I've heard of him, Being a Packer fan, he's kind of not hard not to hear.
He's kind of a big deal in your world, then, eh?
He sure is.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, that is the six-pack of picks. Let's recap. We have Boise State on the money line, plus 125. Nate likes Akron to cover the 13.5 versus Eastern Michigan. He likes ASU to put a beat down at home. He's covering the 12.5 in that spot against UCLA. New Mexico going to stay within 13 with Air Force. He likes the over in UK and Kentucky. He likes a lot of points in that one. And Cal to stay within 5.5 at USC. So we have a six-pack of picks there. Don't forget, Nate is looking to get you some money so you can take your lady out for a steak dinner, right?
That's exactly the motto. I can't talk.
The motto, yeah.
The motto every week, it's steak dinner, mashed potatoes, Dairy Queen, whatever floats your boat, just make sure you take her out for something if you want to keep her for a while. You know what I'm saying?
Right on, right on. So other than your six-pack of picks, what are some games, maybe not necessarily betting, but maybe just as a college football fan, you're looking forward to this weekend?
I mean, I think, just watching in the SEC, I mean, it's just who's going to beat Alabama? I mean, it's tough to. I mean, I was really thinking LSU had an opportunity to, you're coming in Death Valley and they have an opportunity, but I mean, it's just I just don't know anymore who can really get the job done against them. I mean, I do think a game that, people probably aren't looking at really much on the schedule, but is TCU and West Virginia. I know West Virginia has kind of been climbing like crazy to get into that college football playoff, but, Will Grier, I've seen him play some great games against great teams. I've seen him play some piss poor games against Kansas. So, I mean, I don't want to say TCU's a piss poor team, but I think people had higher expectations of them, way back when they were playing Ohio State. Could be a interesting game. I think TCU has a pretty decent defense to, go along, and I mean, Grier threw 3 interceptions against Kansas, and I mean, I think TCU kind of trends more, focuses on defense. So, I mean, it could be an interesting game to watch. But I mean, I'd also like to see the Notre Dame Florida State game. I know Florida State's been getting their butt kicked in lately, and I just heard that Ian Book's not going to be playing for Notre Dame. So it'll be interesting to see how they do with that backup quarterback that they've had. I know he's had plenty of starts, but I mean, obviously hasn't started in a while, being benched and whatnot. So that's another game I kind of got on my radar that not everyone's probably looking at.
Yeah, most definitely. Brandon Wimbush coming in for Notre Dame creates a better matchup, in my opinion, for Florida State's defense. So that game may be a little closer than expected. The question I have, and this is, well, before I ask you this question, the other two games I'm looking at just purely as a UCF fan, because we need these, but who knows what the committee wants to do with them. We need some Michigan State action against the Buckeyes. They're currently a 3-point dog at home, but Michigan State at home is always tough. And like you said, with TCU and West Virginia, obviously I'll be rooting for the Horned Frogs because it'd be nice to get West Virginia out of the way of UCF, even though I know it's going to be tough because Derp Herbstreit and the ESPN crew will make it so that UCF does not sniff a playoff spot. But what I wanted to ask you about that game, that Notre Dame Florida State game, is if Florida State happens to pull off an upset or keep this game close, how does the committee react to having Brandon Wimbush in there, who is, like you said, who has been a starter for this team and actually has won games for this team? How do you think the committee views it if it's a close victory or what they like to now call a potential quality loss to a what were they 4-5 Seminoles team?
See, I do think that any time you're playing a team that's sub 500, at the end of the season when everyone's kind of deciding rankings, I do think you should have to pay the penalty of not obviously shying well out of those rankings, because I think just kind of looking at teams that have but that's the way it should be. I mean, we watched a couple of years ago, Clemson go down to Pitt. If I remember right, it was a greatest game I've ever seen Nate Peterman play. And I know we can't say that anymore because he's terrible in the NFL, but
boy, that seems like such a long time ago.
Such a long time ago, but I mean, I thought Clemson should have paid a higher price then at losing to Pitt, who's unranked, and I believe was around 500, sub 500. But I mean, I think you have to. Committee really needs to look at how these top 10 teams play at the end of the season, because I don't think any losses can be taken lightly. And I think a loss like with Florida State's always been a team to me that I think has been trending downwards since the season started. I had higher hopes for Cam Akers in Florida State, but it's haven't lived up to them. Besides being Louisville, which I thought was greatest win in a while, just how that game ended. But I mean, going back to your point, I think with, I'm really getting tired of the committee being so greedy. just because UCF kind of plays a more, it's more of a mid-major. Mm-hmm. They've obviously been there, done that. They know what they're doing. Everyone is hating on them for that Temple win just because the defense let up a little bit. But, I mean, in reality, I mean, a win's a win. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, I do know that, like, being a Wisconsin fan that I've seen when we were kind of fighting in the top 4 last year, mm-hmm. the biggest thing was strength of schedule. And I think they weigh that a little bit too heavily. So if you're Alabama and you play a piss poor strength of schedule, they favor you because you're a Power 5. But when you're like UCF and you beat everybody, but you stay consistent, with your, and I don't think UCF plays a bad schedule. I just think, they play the schedule that, and of course the big teams, like Auburn or whoever, don't want to go play UCF because, one loss can end your season.
Well, and they have nothing to win. They have nothing to gain from games like that. And I understand why they do it, but it doesn't make it okay. You can't sit there and deny games. Even if you do a home and home, you can't sit there and deny games with UCF and then say, well, you don't play anybody. Well, that's a problem. That's a catch-22. Your fans, who obviously clearly don't understand that you're not picking up the phone because, I mean, from everything I've gathered, Danny White has no problem calling anybody and everybody, and it's the Boise State mentality. I think Boise State set such a precedent that, if they come in there and beat you, you really have nothing to gain, and Boise State has everything to gain by beating you, and Boise State gained the reputation that they had by walking in there and beating teams, and I don't think any Power 5 team wants to give a G5 team a shot like that again, and it's unfortunate, and it keeps the power shift in college football as it is right now, which, again, if you're a P5 supporter, which, I mean, I'm a Florida State fan, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, obviously I'm a UCF fan as well, and I like to see that when there's 130 Division I programs, I'd like to know that 130 of them at least have a semblance of a shot to play for a national championship. I don't like thinking that there's only about 7 or 8 that have a realistic shot. That's not my definition of enjoyable college football. So that's just my 2 cents on it, and I was just curious for your 2 cents on it with Notre Dame having their backup at quarterback in here this week.
Yeah, and I think it'll just be interesting to see because I think one of the biggest reasons why they went from Wimbush to Book was, Wimbush was averaging around 49%, his completion percentage. Mm-hmm. So, and that's not something that's going to win you ball games. Even though he's won a lot of ball games in Notre Dame, I've never seen Notre Dame since Brady Quinn to have a great passing game. Not saying Brady Quinn was anything in the NFL, but just based on college, they've never been a team that's all right, we're gonna kind of like a Phil Rivers mentality. We're gonna throw. That's just not the way Notre Dame plays. So it'll be interesting to see how Wimbush, after not starting for a few games, how he fares and how Notre Dame fares as well.
Yeah, right on, most definitely. All right, let's recap the Big Wall's Big Six picks of the week. We have Boise State plus 125, Akron plus 13. We have Arizona State minus 12, New Mexico plus 13.5, the over 42.5 in the UK Tennessee game, and we have the Cal Bears getting 5 points against USC. All right, Nate, we appreciate it as always every week, coming on, giving us a little taste, giving us a little action, and hopefully getting us a steak dinner every week, and we appreciate the time.
No problem. We'll see you next week.
All right, my friend.